What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the Big Blue in the Bronx YouTube channel, and we are recapping day 3 of the Senior Bowl. It's going to be 3 separate segments. Me and Brian are going to go over the national team. Luca and John will go over the American team, and all 4 of us will come to recap the week, as the next set of events will be the game on Saturday at 12 p.m. Central Time. And of course, we got over 40 interviews to publish on YouTube, so if you haven't already, please check those out. Let's get right into it. And Brian, I'll ask you, let's start with skill position players on the offensive side of the ball, and some DBs too. Who stood out to you on day 3?
Yeah, day 3, the last 2 days have been great. Let's start with that. They've been very impressive all the way around. But day 3 was the last chance you had before the Senior Bowl to make the most of it. Prove to the scouts, last day, last chance, that you have the athletic talent and raw ability to be an asset to an NFL team. Now, there are a few on the offensive side that I took a serious look at. Let's start with my first guy out here, wide receivers. Let's start with Javon Baker. He had a very strong day yesterday. He continued that trend today, especially in one-on-one drills in the red zone. He had run a couple routes. There were a couple points where there were just good defensive coverage, and he wasn't able to hold on to the ball, and it was just broken up. And that's okay, because he ends up following it up with some one-on-one drills with the toss-up ball, and he's catching it over them. And again, this is a guy who's not very tall. If I'm correct, he's around 6 foot, 6'1", about the average height for a receiver, but to be like a starting receiver on the outside as an X receiver, that is a little short, just a little bit. But to see him high point a ball so well and get vertical to tower over a DB and bring him down with 2 hands and 2 feet in the end zone, that's beautiful. And that's beautiful for everybody. Teams really love to see a guy who could be a deep red zone threat. He has proven that. He was one of the fastest guys yesterday. He's still one of the fastest today, and that trend's going to continue. You just saw a guy's stock rise firsthand here on day 3. I'll also add in Luke McCaffrey, the QB turned wide receiver from Rice. He had some very good catches in the intermediate routes that I saw. Some nice speed, mobility, separation off the line. Overall, just some promising things. I think he'll probably still maybe go up, maybe around. We'll see. Again, the Senior Bowl is Saturday, 12 o'clock Central Time on NFL Network. You guys want to check that out. That is where that will be. That's their last chance, truly, but they've looked really good in practice, especially with McCaffrey. Let's add in now the running backs. Dylan Laube, the guy I have touted to be the next big dual threat guy. He has been stellar. Through and through, proven everything, especially his receiving ability today. They're rolling him out of the backfield, and he's making the plays that are needed, especially out of the backfield into a flat, into a wheel. He's done it all, and he's proven himself to be a big asset as a dual threat back. Speaking of running backs, Marshawn Lloyd. They made him run some routes as well, and he looks great. He really does. It makes you wonder how Caleb Williams and that USC team didn't have more wins last season with how much talent has been on display here at the Senior Bowl. Marshawn Lloyd with some great shiftiness, with some great movement, with some good speed, and some good hands. All around, well-balanced back, just what you want for a team in this era of football in the NFL. Let's go into tight ends. 2 guys really stood out in this group. A.J. Barner had a really good day for Michigan. He wasn't really a big name coming into this, but he has now put himself up even higher with the way he has done, especially on the blocking patterns, and we saw a little bit of his receiving ability today on the deep throws, which is big, because if you got a guy who can go vertical, that's a win. That's an immediate win at the tight end position. Speaking of tight ends, Revin Spanford, one of the tallest in this draft at 6'7". 6'7" from Minnesota. Coming into this being like they said multi-role tight end. I saw him more on the blocking side because his receiving ability didn't look strong. But let me tell you how he turned my mind around today. He's working one-on-one on guys like Cam Hart, some other linebackers inside. I think Lou Fowler was one of them, and he was amazing. Although there was one catch that had him 1 foot out of bounds, he got so high up and used his size to bully the defensive back. If I see more of that out of him in the NFL and leading into the draft itself, from the Combine and at the Senior Bowl on Saturday, This is a guy that teams need to take a serious look at in the mid to late rounds. He is a star in the making, possibly as a developmental tight end prospect. And let me give one more guy. Alex's favorite guy. I have to bring him up because I said I'd bring up quarterbacks. Bo Nix. Yeah, we're going to say it. Bo Nix was rough the first 2 days, but you know what? Day 3, I saw a lot of great red zone work from him, some great decision-making, good ball placement, actually stayed inside the pressure this time, didn't let it phase him, stepped into it, stepped up in the pocket, had more movement, and made better throws as a result. If he does more of that, you're going to see a lot more success out of him, and you're going to see his stock get back to where it should be in the first round, probably late.
Yeah, definitely in those 11-on-11 drills. From what I was watching, so I was watching O-line. I was watching a lot of different positions. Bo Nix definitely looked better. Michael Penix definitely looked better. Hartman, he wasn't too noticeable. I remember Penix throwing a touchdown to Marshawn Lloyd. They just look better, and a lot of different guys look better on day 3. Also, to add in as well before we transition over to the offensive linemen and some of the guys I saw, Max Melton. He was a guy that was really struggling, within the second day of the Senior Bowl. And we actually got to interview him. He was very nice and all that, Rutgers product, so he's a local guy for us. But he said he wanted to get better at press man. He's kind of a zone corner, and he actually got a lot better on day 3. And also Kyrie Jackson. He's a guy out of Oregon I really like. A press man guy, very physical at the point of attack. Played on the same defense as another guy who's at the Senior Bowl by the name of Evan Williams. And he is so good at his position as a press man corner, and he's gotten better and better. And a lot of people questioned, hey, listen, why was he not playing on Alabama's defense? But I do want to shift into my area of expertise, at least for the national side. There's a couple of defensive linemen that stood out, but it was mostly ruled by the offensive linemen. I'll say that. Isaiah Adams, who we got the privilege to interview, and the New York Giants have been in conversation with him. Guard and tackle from Illinois. He played both, but in our interview, he said, I want to play left guard, but I'll play anywhere, wherever any team wants me to play. Dominic Puny, tackle from Kansas. He also played guard and played better at guard against some of the higher power guys, higher talented guys in the one-on-one sessions. One guy that his snaps are still troubling, but I did a scouting report on him, and he's gotten better. I would say probably about 4th, 5th round status. Not a high ceiling in the NFL is Kingsley Aguakun. He's a center from Florida. Didn't play a ton of games this past season, more in the past. I think you could switch him over to guard if the snapping doesn't work out. But hey, listen, backup guard in the NFL, backup center, that's where I see him. I agree on A.J. Barner. He had some key blocks in the running game. Tanner Bortolini, we'll get to him in a second. Jordan Morgan, tackle and guard. I know Mr. Angry John did a scouting report on him. He looked really good today. But to move it over to the defensive linemen, there wasn't too many that stood out to me. Adisa Isaac actually looked good. I know Mr. Brian over here got to interview him along with Luca. He's been really solid, right? Also to add as well, Talise Fuaga actually didn't really take any reps today. So whether it's injury concerns or like, hey, I have my stock risen enough, he's going to be one of the best tackles in this class. I would say about 3 or 4. You compare him with J.C. Latham and all these other guys.
Great.
But yeah, exactly. So Adisa Isaac, he had some good reps today, but also wasn't as powerful as the first 2 days. Brandon Dorless, he also had some nice reps. He's not really known for his pass rush. He's kind of a tweener, right? He's a little bit smaller for the inside positions, but he's bigger on the edge. So he kind of has to find a good spot in the NFL, kind of like a Jihad Ward for Giant fans and other fans that know too. And also Gabe Hall. He's been a guy that's really stood out this week. Didn't really know who he was coming into it. I'm like, okay, maybe this guy's just a mid-round guy. All 3 days, he's been pretty good. All 3 days.
And we do have an interview for that with Luca as well with Gabe Hall.
Yes. Guys that really didn't stand out to me, most of the D-line, right? Tyler Davis, he's a guy this past week that really hasn't impressed me. He was on the same line with a guy by the name of Rook or Horhoro, who I happen to like. Didn't really impress me. Again, more of a run-stopping guy. That's what most Clemson guys come out to be, at least linemen. Tanner Bortolini, not a great day for him, but we got to interview him, and he had some decent reps. I think his better stuff is in the running game because he lacked strength in the passing game against some of these bigger guys. But he had some nice key blocks in some of the 11-on-11s when Dylan Lowby was running. But most of the D-line, again, didn't impress me. And also to add, I brought up Fuaga. There's some injury news, right? Jacob Cowling, he left early. Ricky Pearsall and Roman Wilson, they were not spotted, so they must have went home. Brian, I know also you got some injury news. Your thoughts, sharing that stuff.
Absolutely. One of the other ones, I did have the privilege to interview Javon Baker as well today. But one thing we did notice when we were going to interview him is that he had his knee wrapped up in ice. Don't know what it is there, if there's whether or not he's going to play on Saturday or not. I mean, I would like to see him play. I think he's a phenomenal talent, and he would really benefit from a week like this, especially being a former Alabama prospect. There's a lot of upside there and a lot of untapped potential. Now, another guy I will mention that also didn't appear, but I think he had some kind of bad injury of some kind. Rasheen Ali, the running back from Marshall.
It was a biceps tear, I believe.
He had a bicep tear. He has to get surgery on it. He will be out and expected 4 to 6 months, which is a brutal blow to the draft process for him. But we expect him to be back and still make a way to the NFL if teams are willing to invest on him before the season starts. And I think he can get up to speed in perfect time. From what we saw here at the Senior Bowl the first 2 days, or whatever he was on the second day, because I believe the injury happened early in the second day, Rasheen Ali looked great on the outside. A possible great outside runner. He's a speedster, elusive, has decent hands. He's just around the area where Dylan Lowby is, which is a very good place to be. So it's really a shame that he had this injury, but I pray for him the best, and I really think teams should give him a serious look despite the injury he has right now.
With that being said, send it over to Mr. Angry John and Luca for the American Report.
Thank you, Alex and Brian. John, we'll be covering the American team. So first off, we'll start with the standouts. John, who did you see that impressed you in practice today from the American team?
Well, I mean, I looked at a lot of the quarterbacks, the defensive backs, wideouts, running backs, tight ends, all that stuff. You had the line and whatnot. And, I'll start off with the good, right? One guy really impressed me, yesterday and today. Definitely Spencer Rattler, okay? Here's a guy that really, he had his, production struggles in college. But, man, this guy is an amazing talent. He had some really good throws today. Really impressive, okay? You saw the athleticism. You saw the off-script throws, right? You saw why this guy was highly touted once, and I think his draft stock is really rising. He knows different multiple pro offenses, right? He has a 4-year experience at college, so he has a lot of snaps and a lot of pedigree to him, and I think that really helped, this week with his case and his draft stock in general. Another guy that really flashed, one of Brian's guys, his favorite team from Georgia, Tyke Smith. I had the privilege to interview him today. Really good guy out there. And Smith had a really good pass breakup in, I think it was the 11-on-11 drills, and then he had the pick the very next play. Okay, he's a very physical guy. He's bigger in size, right? I mean, he looked bigger based on when I went up to him. But not only that, but he can really read and react to the quarterback very well. Okay, he's not afraid to get in the hands on the ball. So a very good player in Tyke Smith, can also make some tackles. He's had some problems, here and there with the inconsistencies at Georgia, but again, a very important player for them. Had a really good day today. Jackson Sermon, all right, another guy. This guy is a linebacker, right, inside linebacker. He had a pick today on Joe Milton, right. Really impressed me today. Really good in coverage, especially down in the red zone today. All right, that's another guy that I wanted to point out there, right? And Luke, I know you saw him more often, right? Mm-hmm. Another guy that really was good, and I actually liked this week too. I know he was a defensive lineman. Andre Sweat, right? I know you can go a little more into him, what you saw today, but he's a physical freak out there, okay? He's a very good run defender. There's a reason why he was a mainstay at Texas under Steve Sarkisian. Luca, if you want to get into more of him and some of the line guys.
Of course. John just mentioned Tavondre Sweat. He's been phenomenal throughout the Senior Bowl practices. He played really well yesterday in day 2 of the practices. I thought he played well in day 3. Better. I think he's better in day 2. But he's just a physical specimen, as you said. He's just a big-body guy. He's a really good run stopper. That showed in the 11-on-11s. One offensive lineman that I really didn't see having a good day, he was really quiet throughout the first 2 days, was Christian Jones out of Texas, same college. Really good sustaining his blocks, good footwork, pushing guys to the outside, and he even capped off his practice. The offensive line, the defensive line were actually having one-on-one drills, like if it would be a receiver and a cornerback, and he was actually going up against Braden Fisk of Florida State. And, Jones was actually pretending to play corner. He actually had to pick off one of the coaches. So he capped off a very fun practice with a very fun moment. But he's been very good. Another guy that I'd say had a solid day. Same thing with yesterday. Connecticut guard Christian Haynes, who I've self-scouted. Very good. He'll let the defensive lineman get a little bit of a push on him, but he's able to, once they get a push on him, he sustains his block, puts up his hands. Powerful hands they are, and he's been solid. So
300-pound man that's able to really use his upper body strength to throw some guys to the ground. I've seen that too as well, but go ahead.
Yeah, Patrick Paul was another guy who had a solid day yesterday. So with that, good ceiling tackle, a lot of good stuff from him. Another defensive lineman who had another good day, and even I got to mention this too, John. His coach was there. Jordan Jefferson from LSU. Brian Kelly actually saw in the audience. But Jefferson, he's another menace. He's a little smaller than Sweat, but he's more of a bull rush pass rusher. So I liked what I saw from him today. Braden Fisk also had some nice moments on the inside and the outside, so you could really show him. But those were personally my standouts from the offensive and defensive lines. But, John, who did you say that had rough days when it came to the American?
Yeah, there was some day three, rough days for some of them. I mentioned Spencer Rattler as a really good standout from the quarterback. Unfortunately, I didn't really see much else from the other quarterback side on the American side, right? Michael Pratt really struggled, okay? He had a bad pick. He had some missed throws in there. And, he was a guy, you're hoping he can, squeak into like the mid to late rounds. But I think his stock has kind of fallen based on this week. Another guy who I actually thought had a worse day, Joe Milton, right? Joe Milton, guy at Tennessee, had a little more hope at a bigger school, right? But he had a bad pick as well. I believe it was actually Jackson Sermon that picked him off, if I'm not mistaken. But nevertheless, he also had some mishaps in the red zone today, right? The offense really struggled to get it in the red zone during the drills, right? There was also a play where he tried to scramble and he should have just made a quick pass, but he tried to do too much and he would have ended up getting tackled. Obviously, you can't tackle the quarterback because they're redshirted during the practices, but some of his decision-making was a bit of concern for me, for Joe Milton. Another two guys that I didn't this is more of the wideout section, right? Marcus Rosemary, Jack Saint, right? Two big drops today. One was more in the end zone on a ball from Rattler. Another one, he freed himself wide open. He was having a good 2 days before that. He freed himself wide open, hit him right in the hands. He just didn't have, he kind of had the yips today, right? Not a good showing for Jack Saint. Another guy that, he was doing really good that kind of, was invisible today. Xavier Legette out of South Carolina. This is this was the top target for Spencer Rattler at South Carolina, right? And, with Legette, you saw him make a lot of good plays yesterday. You saw the physical traits that this guy has. But unfortunately today, he kind of just, disappeared in the mix of it. There was a lot of other guys that stepped up ahead of him, whether it was Alad McConkey or Jabari Thrash, right? And you didn't really see it from Legette, and you're wondering why he wasn't a big standout. A guy that could potentially be in the late first round. Maybe his stock drops a little in the second round. Maybe we'll have to see how he does, in his pro day and at the combine and all that stuff. So
I'd say I really like. Obviously, I compared it similar to yesterday. Like there were times where the offensive line was holding their own in the one-on-one drills. Defensive line was holding their own. It was a bit of this and that. But I think there's one guy that has really struggled through these one-on-one drills and overall, just in general, the 11-on-11s through the American team. That's offensive lineman, Texas A&M, Layden Robinson. He's just struggling. Like, I think he has a leverage problem. Like, he gets beat on the inside a lot. Like, if you go towards his left shoulder, it's kind of like his weak spot. So much penetration coming from that end. So if I had to pick one offensive lineman or I should say player that really struggled from the American side, that would be Layden Robinson. It's not been a good showing for him. 3 straight days of not really good production. I know, I mentioned yesterday Brandon Coleman didn't really have a good day. He was actually taking some reps in the interior. He looked okay today. He looked a little bit better. But those are the two guys I really wanted to point out. So for our full recap, we'll turn over to the full panel.
All right, so we got the full panel here, and we're going to talk about the good guys and the bad guys who didn't really perform well, guys who performed well this week, and, of course, the next course of events will be the Senior Bowl, and after that, it's the Combine, it's the Pro Days, and all that sort of stuff. We're going to discuss both teams with the good and bad. I'll start with myself and John over here, and then we'll switch over to the wide receiver and DBs. We were really watching the trenches. John, who stood out to you mainly this week?
Well, I mean, the first guy we'll definitely talk about, right? This guy's going to be a projected top 10 first-round pick. Talles Fuaga, okay, right tackle. He is a mammoth out there. Not many people were able to beat him off the line of scrimmage, right? Maybe he got beat once or twice by Adisa Isaac, another guy we'll probably mention. But Fuaga, does a very good job getting in his sets, right? Very quick off the line of scrimmage, right? And he just bullies people. They try a bull rush on him, doesn't work. They try spin moves on him, doesn't work. They try any type of move on him, and he just eats it up. He is a physical freak out there, but he also is very technically sound. Very possible good pick for the New York Jets if they want to pick him, which maybe that'll come in a later video. But nevertheless, he really impressed me this week as one of my first guys, right? Next guy up, this guy's actually on the American side, right? Tavondre Sweat out of Texas, right? Guy is a mammoth of a player. He just had an excellent week, in my opinion. What he did to some of these offensive linemen, he just bullied them on the 11-on-11, right? Really excellent run defender. It doesn't really go unnoticed sometimes, but this guy is a 300-pound plus guy, right? And he just is an excellent wrap-up tackler, and he's very proficient at stopping the run, okay? Probably fits really well as a nose tackle in the league. Alex, I'll let you go next.
Yeah, so Isaiah Adams stood out the entire week. I didn't really watch him until day 2, day 3. We got to interview him on day 3 and talk about some of his stuff. He's a versatile guy. He is a depth player, but he can fit a guard, he can fit a tackle. He really prefers the guard position, as he told me. Gabe Hall out of Baylor that Brian and Luke got to interview, and we didn't really do a scouting report before. And it's like, okay, we were focused on some other guys, but he was really showing out the entire week, going up against some guys in the running game and the passing game. He was really, making his battles worth it. Brandon Dorless, he's a guy that's more of a run defender. He's a tweener. He's really too small to play on the inside. He's lacking the length to play on the outside. So he's got to fit into like a Jihad Ward role at the NFL level, but he really increased his stock this week. Isaiah Adams, Dominic Puny had a good day for day 3, as we talked about in the first half. Kingsley Aguakun, outside the snaps, he definitely rose his stock this week. He's still a depth offensive lineman. He's from Florida, really good at pass protection. Adisa Isaac, everybody focuses on Chop Robinson, one of the top edges in this draft. Adisa Isaac was pretty good, and John mentioned it. He kind of beat, actually not kind of, he beat Talles Fuaga a couple of times. So as for O-line, D-line, I got to mention this guy because we interviewed him as well. Jackson Powers Johnson. Before he left with the hamstring injury, he was dominating. He has the strength. He's got the attitude, all that different stuff. He had a very good 2 days before he left, earlier, a day and a half. Trevor Keegan, who we got to interview, I thought he looked pretty good before he sat on the sidelines, really didn't do anything in practice. For the American side, Tyler Guyton, he's a guy that a lot of people are impressed with out of Oklahoma. The center, Andrew Rame out of Oklahoma, we got to interview as well. A little self-plug there. He looked good. Some other offensive linemen, can't really name much because those were the main standouts. Also Jordan Morgan as well, a guy who played guard or tackle from Arizona. So those were the main standouts to me as far as offensive line. You did mention Tavondre Sweat, and I mentioned all the defensive linemen. And Dwayne Carter, too. He did have some moments where he definitely beat guys in one-on-one situations. I'm going to throw it to Mr. Brian and Mr. Luke as far as wide receivers and DBs go.
All right, well, I'm going to focus more on wide receivers because that's really my specialty. I really love the offensive talent that I see on display. If you're talking about the best things I've seen this week, let's start off with one position, quarterback. The best quarterback of the week to me, who has been consistent through and through, day 3 a little bit weaker, but overall consistent throughout all 3 days. Michael Pratt, the quarterback from Tulane. He had a lot of zip on his throws, had a really great placement, stuff that I really enjoyed because you want to see accuracy, somebody who could serve as a really good backup because, as you guys know as Jets fans, it's important to have a good backup. And if you don't have that, then, you end up 7-10. So, Michael Pratt would be absolutely great in the NFL as a backup and I could definitely see him starting at some point, at least a couple games in his future. Not a career franchise starter, but a serviceable back who has to fill in at times. He has proven that. You want to go to wide receiver group? Straight out the gate, Brendan Rice was the best, I think, wholeheartedly, all 3 days. He did have a few rough drops today. That did happen. But route running wise, speed wise, separation wise, he has been unbelievable. Like, unbelievable quickness, speed, everything. Got good hands, good vision, hand-eye coordination, all of it. He's got everything you need to have a strong wide receiver 2 in your offense. If you're a team in need of a second wide receiver, he is your guy. Line him up as a Y, line him up as an X. Doesn't matter. He's going to do what you need him to do. And he proved that in these 3 days. I'm also going to add in Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey, scouts have raved about him, and this is no exaggeration. Every scout and person we have talked to, whether it's media or a scout or a coach, have all said the same thing. Ladd McConkey has been the most impressive receiver in these last 3 days. You are going to see this man get drafted in the first round. I am telling you this. He's going to sneak into the first round as a late pick, maybe, but there is no way this man drops past the second round. He has proven himself to be quick, to be an proficient route runner. There's a play he took Cam Hart and sent him flying in an opposite direction and made a great catch going to the sideline. It was beautiful. Things like that are what teams need, and he proved that. Another DB, speaking of Cam Hart, I know we just talked about him getting dropped by McConkey, but he had a pretty solid week so far. He has been good overall, good coverage, good hands. Proved he's a real ball hawk, too. He's got that ball hawk talent and ability. Nothing else to say there. That's something to start at a corner. He's going to be very good in the league. Very good. And I think the last guy I'm going to give here, I'm going to dip back into running backs for a second. There were a lot that played really well. I want to specify that. I mean, there were some good reps from Isaiah Davis, some great stuff for Rasheen Ali before the bicep injury, and really some good stuff from Marshawn Lloyd and Kamani Vidal. But if there's one guy who stood out the most to me, by far, it was Dylan Lowby. But I also want to give credit to one more guy, because I've already talked about Lowby enough, as we did earlier. Dejon Edwards. Dejon Edwards from Georgia. That he is not talked enough. He was very quiet among the scouts coming into this, and his pop, his reads of the gaps, great shiftiness to shift from gap A to B, from B to A, from gap B to D even, lateral quickness, beautiful, all the way around. I love it. This kid is going to be a steal for somebody and be great in a team's running back committee room. Absolutely. And those are my top guys offensively. How about you, Luca?
Yeah, I mean, I love Brendan Rice, but I'm going to go into some other receivers. I know he didn't have a great day today, but I was impressed by the end around that he had yesterday. Malachi Corley looked really well. It seemed like he was always getting open. He was always getting in space. He has speed. He has some separation skills. Another guy on offense, Devontae Walker out of North Carolina. A lot of Jet fans are talking about him to be in the second round. I would expect him to be there maybe early third round as well. So he could be right there. I know you brought up McConkey. Jamari Thrash had a solid showing out. But if you want to also get into corners, I know you mentioned Cam Hart, Brian, but also I think Quinyon Mitchell had a nice camp.
Absolutely.
Even in like linebackers, Peyton Wilson, Cedric Gray, J.D. Bertrand had some nice Senior Bowl practices, and I think they're really going to start to build up their stock. Another receiver that unfortunately left, whether it be due to injury or they can't get his stock up enough, Roman Wilson out of Michigan looked very good. He was always open, always getting in the flat.
Correct.
He has good hands as well, good efficiency when it comes to that. But those were my standouts between the wide receivers and corners personally.
Yeah, definitely. Brian touched on the quarterbacks. Talked about Michael Pratt. I thought Bo Nix struggled this week.
Mm-hmm.
No joke intended behind that. He legitimately struggled. Day 3, he was much better. Penix was much better on day 3. All these different things. Also, Spencer Rattler. We got to interview him. I thought he was probably one of the more consistent quarterbacks this week. Now, not always flashy, but making the right reads, sometimes showing the athleticism, all these different things. So I thought those guys out of the quarterback room, they look the best job. Looks like you something to say.
I need to make one hot take. This is going to be maybe, I don't know how hot take it is going to be for you guys.
Oh, Christ.
Spencer Rattler will be a better quarterback than Bo Nix, and it is not even close.
You're a joke.
It is not even close.
You're a joke.
Say, John.
It is not even close.
You're a
Bo
joke.
Nix is so erratic, can't handle pressure, can't handle the media, and It's just the
So let
truth,
me ask
Brian.
this, John. You did the scouting report on him. Did you say that Rattler was kind of a boomer bust?
He is a
Or
very
that's-
boomer bust. The ceiling on Spencer Rattler is way better than Bo Nix. But what I saw this week, especially exclusively this week, Spencer Rattler was more poised in the pocket. He made better reads and decisions. He made better throws. He saw the field much better. He did almost everything better than Bo Nix.
There were some passes I would like to see Rattler take back, though, because I did see some that were picked off. There was a lot of good coverage on there from other corners who were all over the receivers.
Mm-hmm.
And in a quarterback into that situation, you need to be able to throw your receivers open.
That's true.
And that's a big
Bo
deal.
Nix didn't do that, though.
Bo Nix didn't
Bo
do
Nix
that.
had a fumble. He had a few interceptions this week. He had some bad missed throws, Brian.
But you can't say that Spencer Rattler didn't either. Rattler definitely had some moments where he
not as many
did
as
not
Bo
do
Nix.
well.
Not as
And there
many
is
as Bo
one other,
Nix.
but now that you're bringing up quarterbacks, I do want to give a lot of love and credit to one guy who a lot of scouts haven't given enough attention to. They're thinking he might go undrafted. I'm now thinking well otherwise. How about some love for the South Alabama quarterback, the hometown kid, Carter Bradley?
Mm-hmm.
My goodness, I don't know if it's him being in the stadium, being used to being at Hancock Whitney Field, or stadium, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
But let me tell you, he made one of the most impressive throws I've seen all week. And, it's not talked about enough. If you guys haven't already, you can check out my ex, B.A. Mansell. I've been posting all the videos and still shots up on there. I have a video. Carter Bradley's getting pressure, forced back to the back of the pocket, back line where all the coaching staff are, and he just throws up a hail shot, just seeing who's going to get it. And he throws it in the area of another guy I want to give a love to, Flournoy. Ryan Flournoy. We can't forget about him, the Southeast Missouri State product. He's been amazing. He went from being a guy around the 7th, 6th round. He's probably getting up into the 4th round at minimum at this point because of the way he has performed this weekend with his athleticism and his speed. But Bradley throws up a Hail Mary, basically, to the right sideline. Flournoy is heavily covered. He's trying to run a route to get open. He's adjusting. You got DB switching off him. He just throws it up into an area near Flournoy. He gains up the speed, kicks a second gear with the DB all over him, comes back to the ball, dives towards the sideline, reels it in, and falls out of bounds. But it's a catch regardless. The athleticism and the improvisation of Flournoy was on full display, but Carter Bradley threw that pass. If he doesn't throw it in that area, Flournoy doesn't make the catch. And he had a lot of zip on the ball. He was great on the short and intermediate routes. Deep routes, I'd like to see a little bit more work on from Carter, but I do think he's got something special here to at least be on a roster, at minimum on a roster. He showed a lot of promise, and I promise you on Saturday you're going to see it too at the Senior Bowl. Again, on NFL Network, 12 p.m. Central Time.
I also forgot to mention one thing with another wide receiver we didn't even talk about yet. I haven't talked about Luke McCaffrey.
Yes.
He had a really impressive catch today, because, I think the one thing he might struggle with is the physicality. He's a little light for his size, but I don't remember who's throwing the ball. It might have been Michael Penix. And looked like McCaffrey was shoved off his route. He was going straight. He was shoved left. He came back inside. The ball was a little bit underthrown. He catches it, and it goes into the end zone for a touchdown.
Not to mention when he caught it, the tiptoe, right? The awareness to get both feet down. Incredible job right there, okay? And one more mention of a guy I completely forgot. I interviewed him yesterday. Patrick Paul is a mammoth. My God. In the one-on-ones, he really did especially well. I mean, this guy's bicep is bigger than my head. It makes me look like a pipsqueak, okay? So Patrick Paul is a no joke. Could probably pick him up in the second round if you're looking for offensive line help, especially at the tackle position. Alex.
All right. I guess we got to interview Patrick Paul. I guess we'll go around, and this is not our final piece of Senior Bowl content because we have to wrap up the game, of course. I'm going to go around. I'll start with Luca, go with John, go with Brian, go with myself. So far, the experience, thoughts. Luca.
It's been fun. You're talking to a lot of we've been talking to a lot of people in the NFL community, whether it's Colts people, whether it's just people posting on Twitter, and all those different guys. You get to make connections with different people. You get to see what they see. You get to ask them questions. Asking the players questions obviously is a big key too. Interviewed a lot of players this week. Please check it out on the content of our channel. But it's just a really fun experience to get that access. And, being on the field, interviewing the players, getting to know their strengths and weaknesses. It's been so fun. You can't really make words out of it. It's just you have to be there to get the full experience, and it's been awesome. It's like nothing I've ever imagined. It's a big step for us, all four of us combined, and I honestly hope to do the same next year. Obviously, we have yet to recap the entire Senior Bowl because the game is Saturday. But John, your thoughts on the experience
Yeah,
so far?
I mean, the experience has been great. I mean, I can't. This has been a blessing in disguise. But not only are the players great. I had some really good interviews there. Some of the guys I really like to talk about. Jaquan Jackson had a really good interview with. Right. Chris Braswell is a really cool guy. Another guy that I got to interview today. Actually, a lot of guys that are self-aware too. Tyke Smith, a really self-aware guy, really gave some great answers. So, I mean, we're going to share these videos with you guys so you can see for yourself how awesome these guys are. Not only to mention the other media, a lot of the other media members here, really good to see their perspective. A lot of guys flying from everywhere pretty much. I mean, whether, we got more guys from New York, but, we saw guys from Indianapolis today, Mississippi, all over, Texas, doesn't matter wherever, whenever. Just a really good experience talking to them as well.
Yeah, I have to say, this is definitely one of the more unique experiences I've had, probably the best one I've had. Again, much like these guys, this is my first real media experience having a credential and going out there, be able to do this interviewing and reporting stuff. And honestly, it felt great to be around other people trying to do the same thing. Again, we met people from all walks of life, like you guys have said. I got a good friend of mine who I was working with a year ago who was working another job while doing this stuff, and he was based out of Arkansas, and this was the first time I got to meet face to face. It was just a great moment for us. And you never know who you're seeing next to. We're on a plane, and I run into a guy who's a reporter for an NFL team, covering an NFL team, and you never know who you're going to meet. It's just the way the world is. And being here at this experience, you meet so many great people, make so many friends, new contacts, and it's just amazing all the way around. And not to mention the players. Being around the players, seeing it firsthand how hard these guys work and how passionate they are about this game and about this draft and the NFL. It is so admirable, and I appreciate them letting us have this opportunity to be here at the Senior Bowl. And also, quick shout out I want to give to you guys as well for letting me come on this trip as well. They pushed me to come get a credential to join them on this trip, and I'm very grateful for them because this has been a great experience. And, I wouldn't be here without the help and guidance to these guys. So, thank you guys, Alex, Luca, and John.
Yeah, to wrap it up, I mean, as I said, this is not the final piece of content we're putting out for the Senior Bowl. And, of course, a lot of interviews, right? Getting to know a lot of different players, see which ones are personable, see which ones are not personable, see which ones are self-aware. It's a trial and tribulation process. Again, John was talking about these different contexts. This guy does this in Indianapolis. This guy does this elsewhere, and getting those Twitter contacts. I mean, I literally got just a sample size of that when I went on the plane in Newark, and this guy's like, hey, I'm going down to the Senior Bowl too. We had a 30-minute conversation talking about skill position players all around the NFL. But yeah, I mean, the Senior Bowl I've been eyeing for the past years. We got to get credentials. We got to go down there. Obviously, we had the money to do it, and it's been a fun experience. It really has. The players, getting the contacts. We still have a lot of exploring to do, but this small town in Mobile, Alabama, I mean, it's pretty unique. I mean, I usually go down to Florida, but Mobile, obviously, this year is more of a business trip. And this is kind of a stepping stone for all of us. Hope to do the combine, all these other different things in the future. But, knowing that we were talking to people, really players that are going to get drafted by NFL teams and maybe in the first round, second round, and be very good players in this league, it's been a blessing. It really has. But we appreciate it, guys. It's been a long video. Like, comment, subscribe to all the good stuff. Turn on post notifications so you know when live stream pops or drops. Follow Brian Mansell on Twitter. To the description, a lot of still shots, a lot of videos. We're posting interviews nonstop. Luca will be posting some video clips from practice, all that good stuff. We'll talk to you guys soon. Peace out.